Now, I don't know whether it was at the same news conference when Kevin Rudd was asked about the poker machine issue and passed on that. He said he wanted to focus on CHOGM. Here's Tony Abbott.
It's very significant that when Kevin Rudd was asked about this today, he refused to comment because the word around the traps is that he's using this as part of his pitch to his caucus colleagues in his bid to get the numbers.
Here we have Mr Abbott, the alternative Prime Minister of Australia, engaging in this sort of discussion this week. I mean, give us a break. Mr Abbott can engage in his retail political debate wherever he so chooses. I'm not going to buy into it because we've got other priorities this week.
Is it conceivable that Kevin Rudd could use this issue to garner support among his own front bench for the leadership?
Is it conceivable? It might be, but Tony Abbott also wants to rescind the thing, so I'm not sure where Andrew Wilkie would go if matters came to pass that Kevin Rudd, on Tony Abbott's advice, challenged for the Labor leadership and the Labor caucus. On Tony Abbott's advice, changed to Kevin Rudd. And then Andrew Wilkie apparently has to make up his mind on Tony Abbott's advice that the thing wouldn't get up anyway, so he'll bring down the government and make Tony Abbott Prime Minister. There are a number of assumptions, all driven essentially by a very good politician in Tony Abbott, that seem to bear no relationship at all to what might or might not be in the mind of the caucus or what might or might not be in the mind of Andrew Wilkie. Mildly amused that we are taking advice from Tony Abbott on Kevin Rudd's leadership aspirations.
Laura?
Look, yeah, I think I was surprised that people actually took the sort of idea that this was all a leadership bid from CHOGM by Kevin Rudd all that seriously. Now, you know, Kevin is at heart, let's face it, and maybe he's still trying to harness support, maybe pokies is a way to do it, but I don't really think that was what this was about. But I think, as George says, I think the politics of pokies and as a result of Kevin Rudd have changed dramatically as a result of Tony Abbott's intervention this week. Until now, the coalition has been basically looking for an early election, having all its policies ready to go, yada, yada, yada. By calling this way on pokies, Tony Abbott is making a call that Andrew Wilkie isn't ever going to shift sides at the end of the day, and is deciding to lock in to try to capitalise on that Labor heartland vote in the clubs, and surf that until the next full-term election.
Is that good policy? If I can understand that even if 60% of the polls are right, 60% of Australians want something done about problem gamblers and the scourge of poker machines and so on, those who think most strongly about it are those who think the clubs are going to suffer, their sporting clubs might lose revenue and so on, whereas the others might be a little more apathetic. Where are the politics on this?
Well, I think the politics are there's been a huge distraction for going back a year. I agree with Laura, or Laura's assessment where Tony Abbott's coming from. Andrew Wilkie's not going to bring down this government. I mean, Andrew Wilkie's not going to put Tony Abbott in. This is just pure mythology.
No,
but if the government thinks he is, I mean, they're misled.
But the danger for Tony Abbott, though, isn't it the perception of him now from that 60%, who might not necessarily vote on this issue, but the perception of him as he goes into bat for poker machines, as many will see it.
But in the areas where Tony Abbott's trying to get votes, which is in the suburbs, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, and in the regional centres, there's a deep reaction among, as Laura was saying, traditional Labor voters who feels that the government's coming in and unfairly interfering with their best form and cheapest form of entertainment. So Tony Abbott understands that what he's after is Labor voters last time to bring them across to the coalition this time. It's pretty smart politics, and it's based on the assumption that Wilkie, whatever will, and Andrew Wilkie can go and talk forever, and he will talk forever, but he's never going to bring down this government because, A, he wants to serve 3 years, he's got a marginal seat, he's dependent on Liberal Party preferences, he wants to serve 3 years, and he doesn't want to put Tony Abbott in anyway.
But having said all of that, I think the politics of this are now very confused. I mean, you've got Malcolm Turnbull and others a bit uncertain about all of this, so you've got sort of some divisions in the coalition about it. You've got, I think, confused politics with Tony Abbott saying he's going to rescind this legislation, but also talking about bringing out his own package next week. I think most voters don't actually know what this is about anyway and why it is going to bring down their clubs. And I suppose the other question I've got in all of this is that whether Andrew Wilkie does bring down the government or not, which we don't think he is, the deadline for it is May next year. Now, if we're talking about a full-term government, that, once again, like the carbon tax, it means that that's a couple of years between a decision on this, whatever it is, and there might be a compromise that works for everybody, and the election, which means that it won't be an issue by the time of the poll.